The blade whistled past Arya's ear, embedding itself in the wooden beam behind her with a sickening thunk. She dropped the tray of pastries, her heart hammering as flour exploded into the air like snow. The bakery door hung open, broken. 3 men in dark cloaks filled her small shop, their faces hidden. "Where is it?" the tallest one growled, advancing. His hand reached for another knife at his belt. Arya's fingers found the copper ring hanging from the chain around her neck. She'd worn it for 15 years, never once taking it off. Now, as death approached, all she could think about was the boy who'd given it to her. The orphan who'd promised to come back. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, backing toward the brick oven. The heat scorched her back, but the men kept coming. "The wolf girl," the leader said. "We know what you are. We know your blood is awakening. The king's wedding is in 2 weeks. You're a threat." Before she could respond, the shop exploded with new movement. Royal guards burst through the door, swords drawn. The assassins scattered like roaches, disappearing through windows and back exits. In seconds, the violence evaporated, leaving only destruction and the sharp smell of fear. Then he walked in. Arya's breath caught. She'd memorized that face from 1,000 childhood memories, but 15 years had transformed the scrawny orphan boy into something magnificent and terrifying. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that held the weight of a kingdom. He wore simple clothes, no crown, but power radiated from him like heat from her ovens. "Kale," she breathed. His eyes found the copper ring at her throat, and something cracked in his carefully controlled expression. "You kept it." The words hung between them, heavy with everything unsaid. The guards pretended not to watch as their king stood frozen in a baker's shop, staring at a woman from the lower district like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Of course I kept it," Arya said, her voice breaking. "You promised." Kale moved closer, and she could see the exhaustion in his face, the burden of the crown he wasn't wearing. "I did promise. I promised I'd become strong enough to protect you. To come back for you." His jaw tightened. "I broke that promise." "You became a king," she said. "You became the Alpha King. I'd say you kept your word about becoming strong. And yet I'm marrying someone else in 14 days." The words came out flat, emotionless, but his hands clenched into fists. "Lady Serafina. A political alliance. The noble houses demand it." Arya felt the world tilt. She'd heard about the wedding, of course. Everyone had. The entire kingdom was preparing for the Alpha King's marriage to the most powerful noble family in the realm. But hearing it from his lips, standing this close to him after so many years, made it real in a way that shattered something inside her. "Then why are you here?" she asked. "Why come to my shop? Why send assassins running?" "Those weren't my men," Kale said, and fury darkened his features. "Someone knew I was coming here. Someone knew about you." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell leather and pine and something wild. "Someone wants you dead before the wedding. They know what you are, Arya. They know your wolf blood is awakening." Her hand flew to her throat. The dizzy spells. The way sounds had become too loud, smells too strong. The strange dreams of running through forests on 4 legs. "How do you know?" "Because I've been watching over you for 15 years, he said quietly. "I never stopped. I couldn't." His hand reached up, hesitated, then gently touched the copper ring. "I came here to warn you. To protect you. But I also came because I'm selfish and weak, and I needed to see you one more time before I marry a woman I don't love." Arya's eyes burned. "You love her?" "No." The word was immediate, fierce. "I've never loved anyone but you. This marriage is politics, nothing more. A business arrangement to prevent civil war. The noble families question my legitimacy. An orphan on the throne offends them. Lady Serafina's bloodline gives me the legitimacy I need. So you'll marry her and forget about me. Arya tried to sound strong, but her voice wavered. I could never forget you. Kale's thumb brushed across the copper ring, and the touch sent electricity through her. But I will lose you. In 14 days, duty will take you from me forever. Unless. He stopped, looked away. Unless what? Come to the palace, he said in a rush. I need someone to prepare the wedding desserts. My head cook suggested several bakers, but I chose you. Come for 1 week. Just 7 days. Help me prepare for my wedding, and let me have this time with you before we both lose everything. It was insane. Cruel. She should refuse, protect her heart, send him away. But Arya found herself nodding, found herself saying yes, found herself agreeing to the most painful week of her life because 7 days with Kale was better than a lifetime of nothing. 1 week, she whispered. 1 week, he agreed, and the relief in his eyes was almost worth the heartbreak to come. The palace was a monster of marble and gold, so vast that Arya felt like an ant crawling across a giant's table. Servants rushed past carrying silks and flowers, preparations for the wedding that would end her world. She clutched her small bag and followed a stern-faced woman named Constance through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The kitchens are this way, Constance said without looking back. You'll work under my supervision. The king has strange ideas about who belongs here, but I run these kitchens, and you'll follow my rules. There will be no special treatment just because His Majesty requested you personally. Arya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The kitchen staff stared as she entered, their whispers following her like smoke. She recognized the look in their eyes, curiosity mixed with contempt. A baker from the lower district, summoned by the king himself. The rumors would already be spreading like fire through dry grass. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of flour and sugar and stolen glances. Kale appeared in the kitchens at odd hours, pretending to inspect preparations while his eyes found Arya across the crowded space. Their fingers would brush as he sampled her pastries. Their shoulders would touch as they leaned over recipe books together. Every moment was torture and bliss intertwined. On the 4th night, Arya woke gasping in her small servants' quarters. The room spun violently. Every sound amplified, heartbeats from rooms away, mice in the walls, guards changing shifts 3 floors below. The copper ring burned against her skin, and when she looked in the mirror, her eyes flashed amber for just a second. The wolf blood. It was waking faster now, responding to something. To someone. She found Kale in the library, surrounded by books and documents, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He looked up when she entered, and the hunger in his eyes made her knees weak. You should be sleeping, he said. So should you. He gestured to the papers spread before him. The council demands I review Lady Seraphina's family contracts. Every alliance, every trade agreement, every political connection that makes this marriage necessary. He pushed the documents away with disgust. Tell me about Greythorn. Tell me about something real. So she did. She told him about the orphanage where they'd met, about the cold nights and hungry days, about the dreams they'd whispered to each other in the dark. He listened like she was reciting scripture, and when she finished, he took her hand. Do you remember the night we stole bread from the kitchen? He asked. You nearly got us both beaten for it. But we ate like kings that night. His smile was brief, painful. I swore then that one day I'd make sure you never went hungry again. That I'd become strong enough to give you everything. You did become strong, Arya said. You became a king. And yet I can't give you the one thing that matters. His fingers tightened on hers. I can't give you myself. The words hung between them, and Arya felt her heart crack wider. Then give me tonight, she whispered. Give me whatever time we have left. They spent the next 2 days pretending the world didn't exist beyond the palace gardens. They walked among the roses at dawn, their hands intertwined, speaking in hushed voices about a future they'd never have. Kale told her about the burden of the crown, about advisors who questioned every decision, about the chief advisor Thorn who watched him with calculating eyes. Arya told him about her small bakery, about customers who'd become friends, about the simple life she'd built while waiting for a promise she'd known might never come. But reality couldn't be avoided forever. On the 6th day, Arya was sent to the storage rooms to retrieve rare spices for the wedding cake. The rooms were dark, dusty, filled with crates and barrels that smelled of distant lands. She was searching through a chest when she noticed the loose board in the wall. Behind it, wrapped in oilcloth, were letters. Her enhanced senses caught Thorn's distinctive scent on the parchment before she even opened them. Her hands trembled as she read, her wolf blood sharpening her vision to read even in the dim light. The orphan king and his baker must both fall during the ceremony. The guards have been paid. Once they're dead, Lady Seraphina will marry me instead, and the true bloodline will control the throne. The wolf girl's awakening makes her too dangerous to leave alive. Kill them both. Arya's heart stopped. The wedding wasn't just a political alliance. It was an assassination. Thorn planned to murder both her and Kale during the ceremony, then claim the throne through Seraphina. The noble houses would accept it, prefer it even, over an orphan king. She had to warn Kale. Now. Arya ran through the corridors, the letters clutched in her shaking hands. The dizzy spells hit harder now, her vision swimming between human and something else. She could smell every person in the palace, track them by scent alone. The wolf blood surged through her veins, responding to her panic, trying to protect her. She reached the council chambers just as screams erupted from inside. The doors wouldn't open. She threw her weight against them, heard the crack of wood but not enough. Inside, metal clashed against metal, men shouted, and Kale's voice rose above the chaos. Something snapped inside Arya. She'd spent 15 years being weak, being ordinary, being the girl who waited. No more. The wolf blood that had been awakening in whispers now roared to life in a flood of power and rage. Her hands changed first. Claws extended, sharp as daggers, gleaming in the torchlight. Her teeth lengthened, her senses exploded into hypersensitivity, and strength flooded her muscles like liquid fire. She was still human, still herself, but also something more, something wild and dangerous and finally strong enough. Arya's claws tore through the heavy doors like paper. The scene inside froze her blood. Thorn stood in the center of the room with 20 armed men, all wearing the colors of noble houses. The council members lay dead or dying on the floor. And Kale, bleeding from a dozen wounds, stood alone against them, his sword raised in defiance even as exhaustion threatened to drop him. Thorn's head snapped toward Arya, and his eyes widened in shock. The wolf girl. Kill her first. 10 men rushed at Arya. She moved on instinct, her new body responding before her mind could catch up. She was faster than them, stronger, her claws finding throats and hearts with surgical precision. Blood sprayed across marble floors. Men fell screaming. And Arya felt no mercy, only the fierce need to protect the man she loved. Kale rallied, cutting down the men attacking him from behind. They moved like they'd trained together for years, anticipating each other's movements, protecting each other's blind spots. The orphans who'd survived together, fighting together, refusing to die. Thorn backed toward the windows, his face twisted with rage and fear. You were supposed to be weak. You were supposed to be nothing. I was never nothing, Arya snarled, her voice strange and rough through her transformed throat. And neither was he. She lunged. Thorn dodged, but Kale was there, his sword catching the traitor across the chest. Thorn fell, gasping, his blood pooling beneath him. Why? Kale demanded, standing over him. Thorn laughed wetly. Because orphans don't deserve thrones. Because she's an abomination. Because I am noble, and you are nothing but. Enough, Kale said, and drove his sword through Thorn's heart. Silence fell over the council chamber. 20 bodies lay dead. The coup had failed. But Arya collapsed as the transformation receded, her body shaking violently as the wolf blood retreated. Kale caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest. "I've got you," he whispered into her hair. "I've always got you." Palace guards flooded the chamber minutes later, too late to help but quick enough to secure the scene. Kale carried Arya to his private chambers, ignoring the shocked stares and whispered questions. He laid her on his bed, his hands gentle as he checked her for injuries, and when he was satisfied she wasn't hurt, he pressed his forehead against hers and simply breathed. "You saved me," he said. "You would have done the same." Arya's voice was hoarse, her throat raw from the transformation. "I tried for 15 years, Kale said bitterly. "I watched over you, sent guards to protect you in secret, made sure you never wanted for anything. But when it mattered, when death came for me, you were the one strong enough to save us both. Then we're even." He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Unauthorized transformation is a capital crime. The law says I should execute you for what you just did." Arya's heart lurched, but she kept her voice steady. "Then execute me. I'd rather cut out my own heart." Kale's hands framed her face. "I'll change the law. I'll declare your wolf blood legal, protected, recognized by the crown. Anyone who challenges it will answer to me." "And the wedding?" Arya forced herself to ask. "Serafina?" Kale's expression turned anguished. "I don't know. Thorne's dead, but the political necessities remain. The noble houses still question my legitimacy. Without this alliance..." A knock interrupted him. A servant entered, bowing low. "Your Majesty, Lady Serafina requests an immediate audience." Kale's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Send her in." Lady Serafina entered moments later, and Arya finally saw the woman who was supposed to marry Kale. She was beautiful, elegant, every inch the noble lady. But her eyes were kind, and when she looked at Arya, there was no jealousy, only sympathy. "I heard about the coup," Serafina said without preamble. "I'm glad you both survived." "Thank you," Kale said stiffly. "If you've come to discuss the wedding preparations?" "I've come to release you from our engagement." The words dropped like stones into still water. Kale stared at her. "What?" Serafina smiled, sad but genuine. "I've just returned from the Silvermoor territories. My family has been negotiating a massive trade alliance with them for months. The agreement was finalized yesterday. It gives my house more power and wealth than a marriage alliance with the crown ever would." She looked between Kale and Arya. "You don't need me anymore. Your legitimacy is secure through your actions, not your marriage. And honestly, you never needed me. You just needed time to prove yourself." "Serafina," Kale began, but she held up a hand. "I'm not heartbroken, if that's what you're worried about." Her smile turned mischievous. "There's someone waiting for me in Silvermoor. Someone I've loved for years. This wedding was as much a duty for me as it was for you. Now we're both free." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "I could see it the moment I met her, you know. You've always belonged to each other. Stop fighting it." When the door closed behind her, Arya and Kale sat in stunned silence. The wedding was cancelled. The political crisis was resolved. The coup had failed. Against every odd, they were both alive and free. "Arya," Kale said, his voice shaking. He slid off the bed, dropping to one knee beside it. From his pocket, he pulled the copper ring that had hung around her neck for 15 years. 15 years ago, I made you a promise with this ring. I promised I'd become strong enough to protect you. I promised I'd come back and marry you." Tears streamed down Arya's face. "I broke that promise," Kale continued, his own eyes wet. "I let duty and fear keep me away. I let 15 years pass while you waited. But I'm asking you now, not as a desperate boy, but as a man who knows exactly what he wants. Marry me, Arya. Not because of a childhood vow, but because I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. Because you're my equal in every way that matters. Because I don't want to spend another day pretending I can live without you. Yes, Arya sobbed, pulling him up to her. Yes, always yes. He slid the copper ring onto her finger, where it had always belonged, and kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. They held each other as the sun set outside the windows, two orphans who'd somehow found their way home. The wedding happened 3 days later in the palace chapel. Not the grand political spectacle that had been planned, but something smaller, more meaningful. Constance attended, tears streaming down her stern face. The loyal palace guards stood witness. Lady Seraphina came with her Silvermoor lover, both of them glowing with happiness. A handful of council members who'd survived Thorne's coup watched with approval. Arya wore a simple gown of cream silk, her hair loose around her shoulders. Chaol wore his crown, but his eyes were only for her. When the priest asked for their vows, they spoke the words they'd whispered to each other as children, the promises that had sustained them through 15 years of separation. I promise to be your strength, Chaol said. I promise to be your faith, Arya replied. Forever, they asked together. Forever, they answered. When the priest declared them married, husband and wife, Alpha King and Queen, the chapel erupted in cheers. But Arya barely heard them. She was lost in Chaol's kiss, in the feeling of his arms around her, in the knowledge that the promise had finally been kept. They walked out onto the palace balcony as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The kingdom spread before them, vast and beautiful and theirs to protect together. Arya touched the copper ring on her finger, still there, still precious, but now joined by a second ring of gold that marked her as queen. Scared? Chaol asked, his arm around her waist. Terrified, she admitted. I'm a baker from the lower district. I have no idea how to be a queen. Good thing you have me then. He kissed her temple. We'll figure it out together. Just like we figured out everything else. Arya leaned into him, watching the sunset paint their kingdom in fire and hope. She thought about the orphanage where they'd met, about the hunger and cold and fear. She thought about the copper ring, about 15 years of waiting and faith. She thought about the wolf blood that had awakened inside her, about the strength she'd found when it mattered most. Some promises took a lifetime to keep, she realized. Some journeys were longer and harder than anyone expected. But the ones worth making, the ones worth taking, they were always worth the wait. What are you thinking? Chaol asked. Arya smiled, turning in his arms to face him. I'm thinking that the scared little boy who gave me a copper ring grew up to be a king. I'm thinking that the scared little girl who accepted it grew up to be strong enough to save him. And I'm thinking that maybe we were always meant to find our way back to each other, no matter how long it took. 15 years, Chaol said softly. 15 years, she agreed. But we have forever now. They stood together on the balcony as night fell and the stars emerged one by one. Below them, the kingdom settled into evening rhythms, unaware that their orphan king and his baker queen were writing a new story, one where love and duty weren't enemies but allies. The first weeks of their marriage were chaos. Arya had to learn court etiquette, memorize noble families, navigate the treacherous waters of palace politics. She made mistakes constantly, using the wrong fork at state dinners, addressing lords by incorrect titles, accidentally insulting ancient traditions she'd never heard of. But Chaol was always there, his hand in hers, his unwavering support a shield against the criticism. And slowly, the kingdom began to love her. They loved her because she was one of them, a girl from the lower district who'd risen not through birthright but through courage. They loved her because she still baked, appearing in the palace kitchens at dawn to work alongside the staff. They loved her because when she smiled at Chaol, everyone could see it was real, not political calculation but genuine affection. The wolf blood remained a challenge. Arya's transformations came unpredictably at first, triggered by strong emotions or perceived threats. She'd be sitting in a council meeting when her claws would suddenly extend, sending nobles scrambling backward in terror. She'd wake from nightmares with amber eyes and fangs, Kale holding her until she calmed. But with time and practice, she learned control. Kale hired trainers who taught her to channel the power, to transform at will rather than by accident. She practiced in the palace gardens at night, learning to shift partially or fully, to balance her human mind with wolf instincts. It was exhausting, sometimes painful, but she persevered. Because she had a kingdom to protect now. Because orphan children deserved a queen who understood their struggles. Because the wolf blood that had once terrified her became a source of strength and pride. 6 months after their wedding, Arya stood in the throne room beside Kale as they heard petitions from citizens. An elderly woman approached, her clothes threadbare, her hands twisted with age. "Your Majesties," she said, bowing low. "I come from the lower district. My grandchildren are at Greythorn Orphanage, the same one where you both grew up. The conditions there are terrible. The children go hungry. They sleep in the cold. I'm too old to care for them myself, but I'm begging you, please help them." Arya's heart clenched. She looked at Kale, saw the same pain reflected in his eyes. They'd escaped Greythorn, but how many children were still suffering there? "We'll do more than help," Kale said, his voice ringing through the throne room. "We'll rebuild it. Every orphanage in the kingdom will be renovated, properly funded, staffed with people who care. No child will go hungry or cold while we sit on this throne." The elderly woman wept with gratitude. As she left, Arya squeezed Kale's hand. This was why they'd survived, she realized. Not for power or glory, but to use their positions to help others who were still suffering. To remember where they came from and pull others up behind them. That night, they returned to the garden where Kale had proposed. The roses were in full bloom, their scent heavy in the warm air. Arya touched the copper ring, still on her finger beneath the gold wedding band. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Choosing me over political convenience?" Kale pulled her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "Every day I thank whatever gods exist that I was brave enough to choose love over duty. That Serafina freed us. That you said yes." He tilted her face up to look at him. "You're the best decision I ever made, Arya. The only decision that truly mattered." She kissed him, pouring 15 years of love and longing into it. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "We should tell the kingdom our story," she said suddenly. "The real story, not the sanitized version the nobles prefer. Tell them about Greythorn, about the copper ring, about how 2 orphans became king and queen. Give other children hope." "You want to be vulnerable," Kale said slowly. "Show our weakness." "I want to show our strength," Arya corrected. "We survived because we had each other. Because we made promises and kept them. Because we never gave up, even when it seemed impossible. That's not weakness, as Kale. That's power." He smiled, the expression transforming his face from stern king to the boy she'd loved at Greythorn. "Then we'll tell them. Together." The speech happened a week later, broadcast throughout the kingdom. Kale and Arya stood side by side, their hands clasped, and told their story from beginning to end. The orphanage, the promise, the separation, the copper ring, the transformation, the coup, the wedding. They held nothing back, speaking with raw honesty that left many in tears. "Some of you question whether orphans belong on the throne," Kale said, his voice carrying across the crowded square. "You question our legitimacy, our bloodlines, our right to rule. But I say to you that legitimacy doesn't come from birth. It comes from action. It comes from fighting for your people, protecting the vulnerable, keeping your promises even when it costs you everything." Arya stepped forward. "I was a baker before I was a queen. I still am, in my heart. And that's not something to be ashamed of. Every one of you, regardless of birth or station, has value. Has power. Has the potential to change the world. We're proof of that. The crowd erupted in cheers. And Arya knew, watching their faces, that something had shifted. They weren't just tolerating their orphan rulers anymore. They were embracing them, celebrating them, seeing themselves reflected in the throne. As the months turned into years, Arya and Kale transformed the kingdom. They reformed the orphanage system, ensuring every child had food, shelter, education. They created programs to help the lower districts, building schools and hospitals and markets. They fought corruption in the noble houses, stripping titles from those who abused their power. They established laws protecting those with wolf blood, recognizing them as citizens with equal rights. It wasn't always easy. They faced opposition, assassination attempts, political maneuvering from nobles who resented their reforms. But they faced it together, two orphans who'd learned that love was the greatest strength of all. And on quiet nights, when the kingdom slept and they had only each other, they'd sit in their chambers and remember. Remember Greythorn, remember the hunger, remember the night Kale had fashioned a copper ring from scraps and promised forever. Worth the wait? Kale would ask, holding her close. Worth everything, Arya would reply. The copper ring still gleamed on Arya's finger, a reminder that sometimes the most precious things aren't made of gold or jewels, but of faith, hope, and the unbreakable bond between two souls who refuse to let go. Some promises take 15 years to keep. Some journeys are longer and harder than anyone could imagine. But the ones worth making, the ones worth taking, they are always, always worth it. If this story of unbreakable promises, courage against impossible odds, and love that conquers all moved your heart, then we need you to do something right now. Smash that like button because stories like this deserve to be shared with the world. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another incredible tale of triumph and transformation. And here's the most important part, drop a comment right now and tell us about a promise that changed your life. Was it a promise someone kept for you? A promise you fought to keep? Or maybe a promise you're still waiting for someone to fulfill? Your story matters, and this community wants to hear it. Share this video with someone who needs to believe in the power of keeping faith, and let's build a community of people who understand that true love and unwavering loyalty can change everything. Don't just watch and leave, become part of our story family today. Subscribe now, because trust me, the next story we're bringing you will blow your mind even more than this one. See you in the comments, and remember, never give up on the promises that matter most.